Hey, greetings, and welcome. Sunday Rants. Your host, James Harnsberger here, and I am ready to dive in. We've been working on this whole shifting focus now. Sunday Rants really is about the absurd, the insane, the crazy, all the nutty stuff that goes on, and our focus has sort of narrowed down on the criminal just us system, from arrest to prison. And I think we've carved out a couple of areas, like on the front end, we've got police abuse, misconduct, investigators, prosecutorial misconduct once you're caught up in the court system, the manipulation of the jury system, and then the conviction and incarceration of wrongly convicted victims of this insane system. Some of the studies and the reports that we've been going through, we're going to be putting up on both the Sunday Rants site, which you can just go right there and follow right there, sundayrants.com. And also on our calfegia.org site, which is going to be our new nonprofit. And I think our primary emphasis for Calfegia is really going to be in the education and public awareness in the trial jury system for criminal just us, as well as the wrongful conviction and bringing about more public awareness. California ranks among the top 5 states in the nation with the worst record of wrongful convictions and exonerations. And the study I was reading earlier today said that the range of the percentage of people in prison can be, and this again is at the state level, can be as low as 2% to as high as 16%. That doesn't sound like a big number until you apply it to the total prison population, which is outrageous. We rank number 1 in the world per capita of incarcerated citizens. And for those wrongfully convicted, it's estimated to be at a minimum of 75,000 to upwards of close to 500,000 people that are sitting in prison that were wrongfully convicted. And there is an institutional indifference to wrongful conviction. There is a reluctance on the part of the system, if you will, to correct an error or a wrongful conviction. And it takes, as we have learned, it's taken years, many years, for a lot of these cases to come to light. If you go to the late 70s through the 80s and 90s, the war on drugs did a lot to industrialize the prison system in this country, and the incentives that the federal government gave to local municipalities to get more money to throw more people in prison. It doesn't surprise me. Some of the stories that you'll find up on calfegia.org, and I encourage you to go watch these short videos. They're just heartbreaking to realize that the system is this out of control. The case involving George Bell, Roham Bolt, and Gary Johnson. Those 3 were serving life sentences. They had spent 24 years wrongfully convicted. I talked last week about Jimmy Dennis. It's just a very moving video up there on the calfegia.org site. And another one that we recently just put up there, Jerome Morgan, out of New Orleans, Louisiana. And that prison that he was in is on one of the biggest pieces of property in the country for prisons. And I think it's 97% the population is people of color, Hispanic, mainly Black. And when we look at prison populations, and we look at the people that are incarcerated, And we see these cases, and I'm telling you, there's not a day goes by that I don't get another case in my email of another person that was exonerated from wrongful conviction. The numbers are growing. And these are people that have spent 10, 15, 20, 30 years, 40 years in prison that were convicted back in the late 70s, 80s, 90s during all of this nonsense war on crime crap. And remember that the attitude of cops and the investigators and the DA is to close the case, not solve the crime. And there's a big difference between closing the case and solving the crime. And a good part of these cases of wrongful convictions deal with a justice system that it's a freaking joke. It's an abject failure. And to have this many people, and daily now, we are seeing literally every day, I get at least one or two more in my email 7 days a week of more wrongful convictions coming to light, more people, more victims being exonerated that weren't guilty. There's two ways that wrongful convictions happen. Number one, procedural error. They didn't get a fair trial. Evidence was withheld that could have exonerated them. All kinds of prosecutorial misconduct, even misconduct with judges. And then you have the larger body of those cases that involve the wrong person, right? So that means the real person that really committed the crime, the murder, the rape, whatever the underlying crime was, they're still running amok, running loose. And we've got some poor son of a bitch sitting in prison that didn't do it. And so I think our focus is now starting to come together that we're really going to focus on the awareness part. I think that's the biggest part right now in getting rid of this institutional, if you will, indifference about wrongful conviction. Educating ourselves, the citizenry, you, me, everybody that we know, that this is an epidemic. This is not isolated. This is not onesie twosie. We're talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are potentially sitting in prison, upwards of nearly, some estimates is close to 500,000 people that didn't commit the crime. And they're serving, some of them are on death row. We've got all of these organizations, and we're featuring those up there, both on the Sunday Rants site, as well as the calfeja.org site, because the calfeja.org is going to be our nonprofit, our voice of really, once we get our nonprofit status, which should be in the next couple of weeks, we're really going to go out and really start putting together here in California sort of a model of public awareness of just getting the information organized in a way, and we're looking at doing public speaking events. We're looking at doing webinar events, law schools. There's hundreds of law schools in California, and really getting the word out that this is an epidemic. The reason that we're seeing so much of it now is because these people have already spent decades in prison and were convicted during a time when this war on crime nonsense just meant close the case, not solve the crime. And so all these people that have been caught up, look, there's a few things in life that you can describe as evil, right? We know evil when we see or hear about it, right? And to me, this is one of those few things that I can put in the category that's just evil. To have a system that is this dysfunctional, that's this much of an abject failure, that has every bit of indifference about getting it right, just get it done. To me, that's part of the biggest part of the problem. the fact that prosecutors have absolute immunity and suffer no consequence for getting it wrong, covering up evidence that could otherwise exonerate a defendant, to me. And just imagine if it was your brother, your husband, your uncle, your sister, some loved one or some person that you cared about is wrongfully accused and spending the rest of their life behind bars for something that they didn't do. What do you do? I mean, I can't imagine. I couldn't possibly begin to imagine what that could feel like. And here's another part of the problem. We have this not only indifference from the institution and political realm, we have indifference about how we compensate. There's no way you give somebody back 24 years of their life, or 43 years in some of these cases. But how do we compensate and make whole the financial impact to them and their family? And I mean, you've got it from all over the map to no compensation to paltry settlements. In many states, you can't even sue. So there's just a lot of work to be done here. But I think before we get into deciding what needs to be done to fix this, because I don't know if it can be fixed, but I do know this: we need to start talking about it. We need to start educating ourselves about the epidemic called the criminal just us system. This abject joke is the real criminals are the people that work in the system that let this continue to go on. I'm sure that there are good cops. I'm sure there are good investigators. I'm sure there's good prosecutors. And I'm sure there's good judges. I don't care about any of them. I care about all the assholes that are perpetrating these crimes and that continue to do this, and there's no consequence. And they steal people's lives and ruin them just so they can close the case or because they have a racial bias. And to say that we don't have that is systemic. It's an absolute epidemic in this country. So I think we need to get sort of smart about how we approach this. We've got a whole host of organizations that are already doing the good work, like the Innocence Project, the California Innocence Project. They've got offices here in San Diego. Every state has similar organizations. So I think what we're going to be doing is in our resources, we're going to list those organizations. Maybe you don't have time to donate some time as a volunteer. Maybe donate some money to their cause. They've all featured cases that they're working on, people that have been wrongfully accused and convicted, and so we need to champion those. So that's the first part, is getting educated about the epidemic itself. The second is all of our elected officials at the state and local level. We need to really start getting them educated. I'm not really in favor of just covering them all with a wide paintbrush that they're indifferent without giving them a chance to at least comment and at least be made aware of this problem. Because remember, that money that they spend, a good part of it goes into law enforcement and criminal just us. And so we need to make sure that we're holding the elected officials who hold the purse strings accountable to keep this issue in the front line. And I think the third thing is then looking at the reforms that need to be viewed in terms of compensation to somebody that's been exonerated and consequences. I'm in favor of a post-conviction review board made up of independent people that are not part of the prosecutorial arm that can go in and look at every conviction. And let's just go back the last 5 years. Here in San Diego County, there are hundreds of cases of potential misconduct and wrongful conviction, and create sort of this directed effort, if you will, listing out all of the elected officials. This information is all out there on the internet. What we're doing now is organizing it so that we can put it in focus and give people the opportunity to have the resource availability, so that you can at least send an email, you can at least send a letter, you can at least call your representative, and start being the voice for the people that are sitting behind bars that seemingly have no hope of ever getting any amount of justice. This system has failed. And God help any of us if we get caught up in this kind of bullshit that just goes on every day. So I think our focus is starting to come a little bit closer to being defined. I certainly think that by the time we get past the 4th of July, we'll have our nonprofit in status. We'll have our mission statement. We're going to be reaching out to a number of very well-funded, large organizations, and seeing that if we can get some additional funding for a public awareness. I'm working with a couple of firms right now that can get us millions and millions of emails for people, that we can at least start focusing an email and social media campaign that will allow us to have the conversation. And I think if we did nothing more than that as a first step, to have the conversation, I think we're all going to be in the right direction of bringing focus onto this. Remember that, once an issue starts getting some traction and momentum in the public arena, if you will, then we've got a lot of tools that we can use as a nonprofit. Public service announcements through media, those are free. We don't have to pay for those. And I think we need to get some really smart people to sit together on an advisory board and on our executive board for our nonprofit, so that we can have a lot of voices come together. I know I'm going to be going out and doing some speaking opportunities to highlight this issue. And also, hopefully, I'll be able to do some of that at some of the law schools, because law students, they can get a lot of credit in working for some of these organizations like the Innocence Project, internships, and things like that. We've got to educate ourselves, and let those that we know understand how big of a problem this really is. And unless it affects us, it's almost like anything. Unless your car really starts making a noise, bang, bang, bang under the hood, you sort of don't really pay much attention to it, right? We take things for granted. And I think we're all a little bit guilty of that. It hasn't affected our life directly. But look, this is something that is just evil. It's just wrong. This is not a country that we want. None of us want to live in a country that this kind of a problem can be this big and go unaddressed. There are a lot of people trying to do a lot of things. And I think one of the things that we need to do is bring more attention to the problem and have that conversation and include as many people as we possibly can, and educating ourselves about the evils that go on, from the cop on the beat that's planting evidence, to the investigator that's covering it up and lying in the report, to the prosecutor who is charging the person with the crime, and to the judge and jury that are convicting innocent people. And we've got to educate the people all of us that might be serving on a jury. You can't believe or trust a system that fails this much. Think about that. The prison population, and 10-15% of it, those people wrongfully convicted. And those are estimates that are done on some very valid studies that when you read these things, it's just breathtaking. It's shocking. It's offensive. It's evil. And very few things that you can put in that category called evil. I think this is one of those things that qualify as evil. So keep in touch, sign up for our newsletter. keep in touch. We'll keep everybody informed. Every Sunday, 6 p.m., I'll host the Sunday Rants. And as we get the traction on calfeja.org, once we get our nonprofit and once we get a little bit of the formalities behind us and get our mission statement, should be sometime after the 4th of July weekend, then we're going to have a direction. And if you've got ideas and if you've got thoughts or things that you want to share with us, or that give us some idea or focus or things that you think that would be important to highlight. I know we got some stuff from Jessica last week on a thing with the police and kids in the school records and stuff like that. So we put that up there. All of this is good. All of this is good. I know we're all busy. I know we got a lot of shit going on in our own life. But look, if you're sitting in prison, you're on death row, you're sitting in prison for life, and you're never going to get out, and you didn't do it, there's nothing more important than trying to do something to help that individual. And as many as that we have locked up that didn't do it, it's beyond me. I couldn't imagine what that would be like. It would just be devastating. So I think we've all got an obligation to do a little bit more in starting with educating ourselves. And then always open to ideas or topics. Every week, there is going to be no shortage of featuring people that have been exonerated and released and wrongfully convicted. So follow those both on the sundayrants.com and the calfeja.org. Email me, james@sundayrants.com, or you can email me at info@calfeja.org. Either one is good. And I will get back to you right away. And in the meantime, keep up to date. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube. We've got our Sunday Rants up there. We'll be launching the Facebook page for Calfeja and the YouTube here probably closer to the 4th of July weekend or right after that, once we get all the paperwork with the state and the Attorney General finished and filed. Other than that, have a great weekend. Keep everybody in prayer, and remember that the first step is knowledge. We've got to educate ourselves and have the knowledge so that we know what we're talking about and we know how big the problem is. Then those around us, and then those around them, and pretty soon we become a pretty good sized voice, and we can start at least bringing more focus and attention to this epidemic and the criminal joke of a justice system that is just an abject failure. All right, that's all I got for today. Take care. Peace out. We'll see you next week.